So yeah, I have to thank my colleagues who started building that presentation, also from the technical product management in Vissim, and we have, as every year, additions in different departments, different sections. There are improvements in automation and usability, new features in simulation, and well, also some nice things for well, presenting your projects. Let's start with the first thing, which has been, I think it was feature number 23 on the list, which now has, I think that the newest requests are 17,000 something. So that has been a very old one. Can we have automatic speed reduction in curves? As you all know, if you just add a Vissim, build a Vissim network and don't add any reduced speed areas, well, the vehicles will just drive with their desired speed around the curves, which is not really realistic. And now we have added a feature that optionally you can switch it on or keep it off. Automatically reduces the speed depending on the geometry. And the radius of basically for a spline point in a link or connector is calculated automatically. The vehicles decelerate automatically. So they see those spline points from upstream, and you don't need to add any network objects to get that functionality. Which means if you have reduced speed areas just for this speed reduction in curves, you don't need them anymore. How does it work? Well, you activate this feature in the network settings. I believe it even is on by default now for new projects. So in the defaults in INPX. So if you don't want it, switch it off. And you can assign a new curve speed function to each vehicle type. And that defines, as you know that from, for example, maximum acceleration or other functions as well, with a minimum and maximum value and a median value, the speed of the vehicle, the desired speed or the maximum desired speed in a curve of a specific radius. And the radius is calculated for the center of the link, not per lane. Still, like, well, all longitudinal calculations in Vissim are, and you can affect this behavior by using the new attributes in 3D points or in spline points. So if you have that list open, links points 3D, you see that there is a new, or well, radius was already available for a specific feature for having vehicles drift out of a curve if they are too fast. Now this is still there, but it can also be, and that's the second attribute, automatically calculated, which is the default. So in radius source, you can set if the radius is to be calculated or is input as a user value. So with that user value, you can also affect the speed if you want it to differ from what the actual link geometry says there. And then the effect of the radius can either be braking, as I said, drifting. So if too fast, get to the outside of the curve, or no effect. And we did much literature review to find out the default curves. And if you do that yourself, you should notice that the functions you find there always are for specific locations. So if they are measured speeds in curves, are for specific locations with specific speed limits. So for the upper values, higher values of the radius, of course, the speed limit is the deciding part for that curve, which has been measured. Excuse me. But for the geometry thing, it's mainly the part on the red side for smaller radii, which is relevant for us. So, of course, for example, you see these two curves there in 1978. There was some paper, and they had done measurements at a 100 kilometers per hour speed limit, and then 20 years later, they did it someone else did it at 80 kilometers per hour speed limit. Of course, at the top, the curves is lower there, but the interesting part is in the red section, that actually in this time, obviously the speed at low at small radius, at high curvature, had been become a little bit faster, probably to better vehicle behavior in that time. And well, how does it look? How does it work? Yeah, that's the well, sharpest corner in the Black Forest. And well, now you can see there with the color-coded vehicles, it's the speed and at the moment how they, well, slow down when they approach it and, well, accelerate again. On the right side is a real video. There's, yeah, the speed limit for trucks is 10 kilometers per hour there. So what is that, like 6 mph? It's really low. They are actually driving faster a little bit, but yeah, many drivers really underestimate that situation there. So there are lots of accidents. And well, I think now the coloring has changed. Yeah, that's now the ratio between speed and desired speed. So well, you can see that for cars, the reduction is higher, of course. And yeah. Well, the next big thing, and which might help you, which save you a lot of time, is the automatic creation of meso nodes. If you export your network from Vissim already through ANM and then do meso simulation in Vissim, you're already set. Everything is there. But if you build the network within Vissim, you usually have the problem that inside the DTA nodes you have, well, the what is it? The lane different links changing or separate link segments, because the number of lanes changing all the time. So at the intersections, and that is something which was not allowed for the meso model in Vissim for the simulation. Now there is one change internally, which is that for meso turning movement, just the minimum number of lanes of that link sequence is used. So it actually may have differing numbers of lanes on that link sequence, which was not allowed before. But anyway, if you use this, and now you can just click create meso network nodes, and well, you should usually have all, or say 95% of the ones you need. If there are some specific situations where nodes are very close together or so, you still have to do some manual editing, but usually that works fine. Okay, in the next section, and now you can watch there, if you move a connector, that is something which is now possible if there are, well, the two links available. Previously, you could only move the whole combination, and with controlled drag, you might know that for duplicating of objects, you can also duplicate such a connector. So if the required base objects are there, which is the links in the case of the connector, you can now even move and duplicate such depending objects like connectors. And similar for pedestrian routes there, if you select the pedestrian route, you can now with control drag make copies of it. If you select also the intermediate area, this one is copied as well. So basically all of the selected elements in that multi-type selection are now copied, and yeah, should help. Yeah, and well, maybe the nicest feature in this year's version is the new networks and scenario comparison. If you use Vissim, you know the TRA viewer, I guess, where you can see the differences between, well, in one TRA file, which is a modification file, which is basically one change to a scenario. And finally, we have this also in Vissim, and it has multiple use cases. You can see the content of a modification. So what attributes of which objects does it change, which objects does it create, or which objects does it delete. You can also see the whole content of a scenario, which is, well, the combination of all the modifications building that scenario. You can show the differences between two scenarios or the difference between two arbitrary networks. So even if you don't use scenario management, you can use that. And previously, you could also see that by looking into that TRA file. And, well, you are not happy. And now you get this. You get a tree view showing you all the differences between the two networks, or, well, the content of that modification. You see the red minus one is, or the minus icon shows you the removed objects. The green plus is for the added objects in the modification, and the blue asterisk or star is for objects which have different attributes, or which have changed attribute values. And that's not all. You can also see that in the network editor. So in this case, you can see the change or the difference between, I think that is the scenario, yeah, with the roundabout. So you see the new links and connectors in green. You see the red ones, which are not available, don't exist anymore, and you get this for all objects which well, take up an area like basically links, connectors, pedestrian areas, and ramps. The individual sections are not colored because that would be too confusing with the normal color. But you can still see those in the tree view, and yeah, I hope that almost. Yeah.
Back to the text file.
No. You don't need to do anything with the text file. You open it in Vissim. I will just show you. You just in the let me see, where is it? Yeah, so here in the there are new buttons. You can, for example, if you are in scenario management, you can just right click on a modification or on a scenario and select show content. And then it will open that additional pane here with the tree view, and the current network editor window will show the differences. So it will keep the network loaded, but it will show what differences it has from that other thing. Or of course, in that case, if you select show content, it will load the modification and the scenario. And if you have a scenario loaded, you can select a different scenario and then click the compare the scales here button, or probably it's also in the context menu, and then you get the difference between the two scenarios. And well, here's some example with some obstacles and pedestrian areas. And if you want to apply this to arbitrary networks, not in scenario management, then the access is through that compare and transfer networks item in the file menu. So you basically then you have a network open, you click that, and then you get a new file selection dialog to select that other network and get then the changes to get from that network to the current one. Oops. Okay, then there are a few more nice things. It was already possible to get a number from a string by just using string to number in a function. Unfortunately, sometimes you have multiple numbers in an attribute, which is in a string form. For example, in FDS points, XYZ coordinates. And if there's now the new function word n to select a part of a string defined by a given separator. So in this case, these attributes are user-defined attributes with a function defining to get the first, second, or third part of that string attribute, and then converting that into a number. So you can now, in cases where the attribute is, for example, a name plus a number or so, and you need that number for some automatic handling scripting, also can extract it with that function. Yeah, there was also reverse parking. Of course, you have seen that already last year, but we really had to work until this spring to complete it, and also to make it much faster than it used to be before. The handling of controlling the conflicts between all these cars parking in, parking out, and passing is completely automatic, and it doesn't use any conflict areas or priority rules. So you don't have to use those. You basically just tell the parking lots or set for the parking lots if there's parking in reverse or in forward, or both are possible, then it's any, and you just park out in the other direction. And in the parking route attributes, there is a relative volume attribute for if you can park from one routing parking decision in one parking lot, and you want some vehicles to park in reverse and some others forward. Then you need two routes, of course, and you can set the relative volume between those with that attribute. It's only for if you have the parking spaces where you use both directions. And of course, this is also available in the car park generator. You just have that relative volume of, there it is, the parking rate in reverse, how many vehicles want to park in reverse. If you set that to 100%, you get only the network objects you need and the routes for parking in reverse. If you set it to 0%, it's only parking forward. And well, everything in between, you get all these links and connectors. And well, the relative volumes are set to this. Yeah, another thing we had to edit because the implementation of the new RBC controller was a bit slow, and we also, the same team would have had to build the full Vissim controller for Linux. So what we did is add a new, very simple fixed time, which feels almost as in old times, because now fixed time or a fixed time controller is back inside Vissim, where you just enter the start or end the cycle time when green ends and when red ends as attributes in the signal groups. So you have basically immediately the all the data inside Vissim. You can have combinations from them in different modifications. So for scenario management, it's even better than the big controller, but you don't have stage-based control. You don't have daily programs. You cannot have 2 green times in one cycle and so on. So it's really very simple, but that is available for Linux as well, because it's just inside the calculation kernel now. Then there are a few things for elevator boarding. It has been found that pedestrians try to stand in the middle and of the elevator, and so the boarding took too long time until they were finally pushed to the back. And now you can set the value of what is the preferred position of the pedestrians entering the cabin. Okay, and maybe does any one of you, has anybody used the WMS backgrounds? No. Okay, I can imagine why, because so far you had to do this, and it's hard to find out how to do this. So this has been improved quite a bit. You need only one URL for the web map service provider like this, and you enter this in the dialog, and then you get to a nice selection dialog, which shows you the different layers which are available by the providers, and you can then select the layers you want, and you can even order them and see in the preview how that will look like. So that is really nice. I think in Vissim there are several default or links available, so you can just copy that link from there. I'm at the moment not sure if those are in Vissim already. Maybe not in the default INPX yet. Okay, then also we have lane marking types now. So you can have different types of lane marking, width and length of the gaps in between. And we can import IFC or BIM files as static models. So not only to convert them into objects, actual objects for the pedestrian simulation, but just as for the visualization. We have dynamic traffic signs, which is a big name for basically having a texture attribute at the traffic sign object, a 3D traffic sign, which is, just a variant of the 3D signal object. And what you can do is through scripting or through attribute modification or attribute decisions, change that link to the texture. And so you can change the sign, how the traffic sign looks in the 3D simulation. And now last but not least, we have a new way for animated 3D models. And we have, finally replaced that old V3D format and are now using the Filmbox format, which is a widely used format for 3D models. And this includes also animations for those objects. And if you have those objects, you can use those as static models or as vehicles or pedestrians. And then for using the animation in the Vissim 3D model attributes, you can select one of the animations available there, and then also, start the animation, pause it. You can switch on looping. You can define the speed. You can set if it stays at the end state or goes back to the first state and do the animation in reverse. And this is what Tobias Kretz has done with some pedestrian models. So I'm looking forward to the first Vissim simulation of Swan Lake. And then when Jochen said we need something more realistic, okay, here you have a car with spinning wheels finally, and a jumping cube in the background. Yeah, and some things I have to mention. We are still working on the new RBC controller DLL, so which does not have preemption and transit signal priority yet, but well, fingers crossed. Let's hope it will be early next year when we have that, so we can really replace the old one. The contractual situation is a bit unclear. So, everybody who has that old controller can definitely use it with the old versions still, with 23 also still, but that might change. We'll see. And the synchro import has been removed from the menu because we had to, maintain that import code in Vissim and in Visum Bistro in 2 places, and it was not really generating a nice geometry that's much better in Bistro. And also there you can check the signalization and all the settings much better than in Vissim. So we decided to remove that. And now Python 3.9.5 is installed, and in a different way as before, because in Visum we always had that automatic install, and it installed top level installation of Python. In Vissim we didn't have any installation, automatic installation, so that's new. But now that is inside the Vissim directory, so it works mainly or exclusively for Vissim, this installation, and doesn't conflict with other Python installations you might have. So that is now called embedded package, whatever that is exactly. Okay, thanks.
Let me pass the microphone.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning. This is Jose from Concert Engineers. Do the dynamic traffic signs or the lane marking types change the behavior in any way, or are they just more? Okay, thank you.
So the lane marking is actually overridden by the lane change. If you have lane changes forbidden for specific directions, you still get that through line in addition to what the lane marking says, but it uses the same width then. But yeah.
Question on speed reduction is first part question is it only on connectors or is it links and connectors?
It's on all spline points of all links, basically.
Okay.
It excludes all connectors with only start and end point, because you might have 2 links which are meant to be in a straight line, but moved by a little bit. And then if you actually calculated radii there, you would be surprised how slow vehicles get. We found that out because we hadn't thought of that situation. So these are ignored. Also, if you have connectors which are shorter than 20 meters and the 2 links are basically in the same direction, just continuing, then the connector is ignored as well. And apart from that, basically we are doing a bit of smoothing for each spline point 5 meters in each direction, so that inadvertent little zigzag things don't hurt too much.
Okay, so then the second part to that would be when you're upgrading, you're taking a Vissim 21, 22 file into 23. Are you automatically going to remove RSAs, or is it going to be one on top of the other, and then you're going to have to kind of go through and clean up RSAs that may be overriding your spline calculations?
Well, they would also have an effect. Basically, if both the geometry and the values of the attributes of your reduced speed areas are correct, then it's only slows down calculation a little bit. But it only if you switch it on. So if you load an old file, not the new default INPX and not an empty network, but an old file, it's not switched on by default. You can switch it on in the network. But if you switch it on, the reduced speed areas are still there. Of course, you can just kill them all if you want. If you find that the automatic speed reduction does what you need.
I'm going to move to the front, but just to.
Then, yeah.
In
Yeah,
addition
maybe
to
one more, yeah.
some of the transit improvements to the RBC, are you also looking at like phase omits and the pattern or additional modifications to each of the patterns?
We will be looking at improvements there as soon as we have got the standard functionality working.